A U.S. warden built a prison that ran like a cartel storefront. Blackstone's own records list 568 inmates linked to narcotics trades and protection payments inside a federal facility. The facade? Discipline and rehabilitation. The product? Fentanyl and cocaine flowing through protected cell blocks and off-site channels. In the next minutes, you'll see how 5 deaths in a single week exposed disabled cameras, manipulated logs, and an adjoining production hub turning out nearly 1 million counterfeit doses. The question isn't how drugs got into prison. It's how the prison became the network. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Why did a warden praised for order preside over a week with 5 medical deaths? The question started as a whisper in the corridors and became a checklist on a conference table. On paper, Richard H. Callahan looked like the safest pair of hands in the system. He toured civic halls with talks on second chances and workforce training. His quarterly briefings flagged low incident rates. Auditors signed off with tidy notes, the dashboards that mattered. Use of force, grievances, medical response, tracked below national averages. He hosted media days where units gleamed, dorms smelled of bleach, and every officer hit the right points on the tour. The 5 deaths refused to sit quietly behind the glass. They landed in a 7-day run across different housing units. Ages didn't cluster in the range where chronic failure spikes. Prior health flags did not line up with sudden collapse. The timing cut across day and night watches, with gaps that looked like cue marks. None of it matched a system drifting into chaos. It read like a system working too smoothly to catch what it didn't want to see. The facade ran tight. Inspections arrived on the quarter hour. Clipboards carried checklists with no stray ink, no corrections, and no variation in notation style. Training rosters matched sign-in sheets to the minute, as if the same hand moved both. Unit walls carried compliance posters with fresh signatures, none older than a week. Even spot drills landed in perfect sequence, producing the same scores across teams that rarely perform the same under stress. The effect sold order. It also flattened the human noise you expect in a real facility. Then the files started to echo. Camera outages in restricted pods appeared under maintenance notes during the same 2-hour window, several nights in a row. The window matched the busiest contraband hours from prior intelligence on other facilities. Shift logs repeated lines word for word, down to a stray double space and the same typo in an officer's name. The cloned entries crossed 3 different supervisors. When an internal system duplicates errors, it points to a template in use, not 3 people making the same mistake. Federal analysts don't chase hunches, they chart patterns. In custody mortality work, they map age, comorbidities, medication changes, and event timing to expected baselines. When a facility lands outside that envelope, they run Monte Carlo simulations to test whether chance can explain the cluster. Camera uptime is treated the same way. Investigators calculate mean time between failures, compare it to manufacturer specs, and look for outages that align with predictable human activity instead of random faults. When outages cluster at shift change or during mail runs, red flags go up. A small moment broke the surface. A unit nurse flagged a gap in pill counts for a common pain script. Her cart report showed a lower number than the pharmacy release should allow. The inventory later settled. The count corrected itself, but the figure aligned with a 3-character code seen in a non-clinical ledger, not a pharmacy batch number. The nurse did not know the code. Someone else did. The Monday meeting arrived with soft voices and a stiff line of chairs along the wall. An external medical examiner sat down with the clinical team and asked for toxicology beyond the facility's standard panels. Synthetic opioids would not always show in the quick screens used for routine checks. Extended tox runs took more time and money and required chain of custody discipline. The request was calm, but it moved the case out of the simple column. Results landed with a pattern. The screen suggested fentanyl exposure in multiple victims, at levels consistent with ingestion rather than incidental contact. Dosage indicators varied, but all pointed to the same family of compounds. Complications read differently when the same agent appears across separate units, different watches, and patients with no shared clinic time. A single vector looked more likely than 5 isolated failures. With that, the story of order tilted. The deaths did not prove violence in the halls or a riot behind the cameras. They hinted at a market that used clinic doors, custody schedules, and polished audits as cover. If the deaths were the alarm, the ledgers were the blueprint. 568 names that turned a prison block into a balance sheet. And on that sheet, the same clean handwriting held two worlds together, one for show and one for sale. What turns inmates into account numbers tied to a cartel inside a federal facility? For investigators, the answer started in a binder and a hard drive found in the same locked drawer. The binder held tight, clean handwriting. The drive mirrored it with spreadsheets and shorthand fields. Both listed 568 names that didn't sit beside commissary receipts. Each name carried a code under three headings: product, protection, and transfer priority. Product tracked doses and varieties. Protection assigned who got moved to safer tiers and who lost yard. Transfer priority labeled who stayed, who shipped, and who would never come back the same. The pattern looked like payroll. Deposits landed on a 2-week beat. Payouts cleared in the same window. Rows carried a blunt note: removed, no return. Next to inmates who vanished from grievance dockets and reappeared only in transport records or not at all. The numbers didn't swing like hobby contraband. They locked into a cycle, the kind you set with reminders, alarms, and automatic triggers. It treated a prison wing like a floor of cubicles. Premium zones emerged in the ledger. Certain cell blocks cost more because they offered quiet nights and blind angles. Those assignments matched the protection entries. Inmates who paid moved into blocks where fights dipped and checks ran short. Transfer threats did the pushing. Miss a deposit, and the next column put a date next to a bus route. That threat mattered because contraband meds flowed through the clinic and wore the right labels. Routine prescriptions masked pills swapped at the cart. A nurse handed a blister pack that passed inspection. The entry in the ledger showed the spread of what that dose should do on the yard. The money moved as if it worked for a firm. Shell accounts paid stipends described as training or staff wellness. Cash apps fed small bursts that never triggered a single large report but added up. Crypto micro-wallets churned with dozens of tiny transfers, each one hard to notice, together clearing 6 figures in a month. A repeating deposit of $42,000 appeared every other Friday. It was clockwork, like a payroll run, and matched line items tied to supply and enforcement inside the walls. One entry turned into a story you could trace in the system. An inmate's row flipped from pending to payment cleared. 48 hours later, housing changed from general population to a protected tier. The ledger marked the transfer priority box green. Within 72 hours, complaints filed against a specific guard disappeared from the internal queue. During that window, cameras in the corridor outside the new cell went dark under maintenance notes. The timing lined up with a supply drop flagged elsewhere as a service call. No one wrote a word about a search. As investigators expanded the view, the ledger's edges bled into payroll tables and contractor lists. Medical staff received unusual bonuses that didn't match overtime or emergency callouts. Administrative salaries ticked up with backdated justifications. Off-book training stipends appeared with vendor names that traced to shell companies registered in Panama and Malta. Those companies also tied to the same wallet clusters feeding the $42,000 rhythm. Over time, the total crossed $12 million with no legitimate service trail. To prove coordination, analysts cross-checked ledger IDs with inmate call logs and internal schedules. They found short strings in call notes that repeated on days when cameras later failed. Those strings matched cell inspection times. Supply didn't move in the chaos of a busy tier. It moved when inspection windows opened and cameras went off, giving a predictable lane from cart to cell. The ledger did not only track payments and privileges, it told crews when to move, who to move, and which door would be unlocked for 3 minutes. By the end of the review, the story shifted. Blackstone wasn't a breach where outside products slipped in by chance. It was the point of sale. The market lived in the calendar, the clinic roster, and the housing chart. Privileges and safety acted as inventory. Distribution reached beyond the fence because control started inside it. The ledger was not a diary. It was the operating system. If Blackstone was the storefront, East Hollow was the factory, wired, armed, and running without a pause. Why did a prison ledger lead agents to a factory with over 100 armed guards? The ledger's codes lined up with a string of late-night calls and silent texts routed through encrypted apps. Analysts mapped number pairs from Blackstone to devices that pinged along a dead zone on the edge of town. Thermal scans from a fixed-wing aircraft picked up steady heat where nothing should have been running. The site carried a bland name, East Hollow Apartments. But the windows were boarded and the parking lot showed tire ruts with fresh fuel stains. Inside those walls, silhouettes moved crates in relay lines. The factory lived behind a fake vacancy sign. Teams built the trail by matching call bursts to heat spikes and short couriers runs. A contact at Blackstone would place a 2-minute call. The ledger would tick a supply code, and 15 minutes later, the heat signature at East Hollow climbed. Encrypted chats carried short strings that echoed the same timing as Blackstone's camera outages. By the third week, a pattern repeated often enough to set a clock. The connection didn't rely on one source. It sat on phones, chats, and thermal. When the first drone sweep counted bodies, the number pushed past 100 with rifles posted on stairwells and rooftops. The load inside matched the risk. Machines pressed pills day and night, and output estimates approached 1 million counterfeit doses ready for distribution. Many of those pills were fentanyl masked as trusted meds, stamped with markings that matched common US products.